Welcome to today's reading and reflection for Tuesday the 7th of July. Our reading today is from Luke chapter 18 verses 1 to 14. Then Jesus told his disciples a parable to show them that they should always pray and not give up. He said, "In a certain time there was a judge who neither feared God nor cared what people thought. And there was a widow in that town who kept coming to him with the plea, 'Grant me justice against my adversary.' For some time he refused, but finally he said to himself, 'Even though I don't fear God or care what people think, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will see that she gets justice, so that she won't eventually come and attack me.' And the Lord said, 'Listen to what the unjust judge says. And will God not bring about justice for his chosen ones who cry out to him day and night? Will he keep on putting them off? I tell you, he will see that they get justice, and quickly. However, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth?' To some who were confident of their own righteousness and looked down on everyone else, Jesus told this parable. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood by himself and prayed, 'God, I thank you that I am not like other people, robbers, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week and I give 1/10 of all I get.' But then the tax collector stood at a distance. He wouldn't even look up to heaven, but beat his breast and said, 'God, have mercy on me, a sinner.' I tell you that this man, rather than the other, went home justified before God. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted." Doing things on autopilot can be a good thing. We don't want to have to think about everything in detail all of the time. Sometimes there are things that we don't remember ever not doing. But there are some things that are habits that we learn over time because of how people have taught us. Things which make for good practice, which in turn can become core to who we are. Jesus uses the parable of the persistent widow as a reminder to the disciples and us to pray always and not lose heart, never being discouraged. While it's an encouragement to use it as an example to persist in prayer, that persistence must be rooted in the confidence that we have in God's faithfulness. I believe in the power of prayer. I believe that God always answers prayer. And no, we don't always get the answers we want. But it's an essential part of our relationship with God, one where we can never stop growing, and we can't do too much of it. It's a privilege to pray, that God extends to come and talk to him and to bring everything and lay them down at his feet. It should never be a last resort when things get really tough. It should be at the heart of our relationship with God. And no, we don't always get those answers. Not the way we want them, but the way that God knows is best for us. Prayer isn't always easy, but neither's life. But because God is in control, we don't need to feel overwhelmed. How prayer works, well, that baffles so many people. Equally, some people wonder why we even bother. Yet for many non-believers, it's an instinctive response to a crisis. The words, "Please God," have been spoken by thousands of people in times of panic. It should be a natural part of any Christian's life, but it's something that we all know we could spend more time doing. But Jesus teaches us that no matter what, you keep doing it. You keep going. Even when it feels like we may have been praying the same prayer forever, there's nothing to stop us from still saying the same words. This parable is the reminder that God is never sick of us praying the same prayer. In fact, we're told, always pray and never give up. Jesus modelled this life of prayer for his disciples and us to learn from. Throughout the Gospels, we read of Jesus taking time out to pray, and if it's something that Jesus depended on, it's something we must do as well. It was life-sustaining for him. It was a conversation that was two ways between him and God, not just in time of emergency, but every single step of his earthly journey. But have you ever been so worn out that it feels that you have no energy left? Well, I imagine that we can pinpoint those times when we felt exactly like that, physically, mentally, spiritually exhausted. Times when we can honestly say that we've really struggled to find the right words to say to God. This week I heard of a little girl who simply prayed A, B, C, D, E, F, G all the way through to the end of the alphabet. And when her mum asked her what it was, the comment was, well, God knows it. I'm just giving him the letters. He knows what I want to pray. It made me smile, because if a child can pray like that, God knows what we want as adults as well. But when Jesus told this story of how they could act out the principles of prayer in their own lives, he told the story of a judge who didn't recognise God's authority, a judge who didn't care about other people's feelings, an unjust judge, not one with upholding a right and truthful acts. He didn't have Jewish ancestry, probably. He didn't fear or respect God, and he certainly wasn't following God's laws. But regardless of this, he was still in a position of authority to help and judge fairly those who wanted help. Now the widow, well, widows don't have easy lives. No husband and possibly no children to stand up for them. They were vulnerable members in society, and she came to seek justice. With nobody to stand up for her, this adversary that she speaks of is making her life miserable. He's taking advantage of her vulnerability. Because she wasn't prepared to accept it, she had no other choice than to go to the judge who had a bad reputation for fairness. And what does she do? She makes his life difficult. She keeps going back again and again and again, and there's only so long that she could be ignored. Now, anyone who's experienced persistent behaviour from another person will understand that there's a point when the easy solution is to take action. But this judge openly admits he didn't care about people's feelings. So what changed was nothing short of miraculous. Her comments had worn him out. This woman who'd been on a mission had given this person no personal space. And she committed herself to getting justice, and nothing was going to stop her. God is not an unjust judge. He cares for us and loves us and can't be worn out by our persistent prayers, even if it feels like we're pestering him. And if God is that person, he can't be described as unjust. Prayer should become our default setting, something that we know we need without even being reminded of. But until that happens, remind yourself and persist in reminding yourself of the importance to pray. Amen.